Hello, welcome back. So I was thinking about some video ideas and I thought it would be a really good idea to show you guys a difference in how I do my makeup, Instagram versus my everyday life. So I thought it would be a really good idea to show you guys. Now this might be a long video, so just bear with me, but for the sake of the video I am going to use my Carnival palette by BH Cosmetics and Stacey Marie, and I'll also be doing just the neutral shades only because I'm hoping it might make sense. Who knows, we'll see. So the first thing I usually do is I usually prime my eyes. Actually this might be the Instagram side and this will be the everyday side. I'm going to start with the Instagram side first, mainly because I feel like it takes the longest. So I always start with my P. Louise base and I just put some out on a little palette. I just grab a brush. This is the this is the Real Techniques Deluxe Crease Brush, and I just load that product up onto my brush and I just apply that on my eyelid. Now I'll roughly as well kind of carve out my eyebrows, just roughly. I'm never perfect with this. And then I just cover my whole lid with that product. This is a really good product to really get maximum colour payoff with your shadows. I don't know, there's some magic to it, who knows. Okay, so we've got something like that. Sometimes I will go in with the P. Louise base on my everyday eye, but we'll do that a bit later. Okay, so in this palette, I'm just going to be using like this row. I might possibly use a black, I'll see how I go, but I'm going to start off first with this shade here, this darker brown in the shade Intuition. And what I do is I grab a small blending brush. I'll just grab this one for the time being. This one's the LA Girl number 204 brush, and I really make sure to load the product onto that brush. I still tap the brush to tap off any of the excess so I can minimize the fallout. And then I go in and I stamp the product onto my eye, and I also begin to map out the shape that I want. So I really want it to angle up, which is what I'll do here. And then I'll also begin to pat that into my crease. I will do a half cut crease. I'm not worrying too much about the blending at this point in time. I'm just more worried about applying the eyeshadow. And you'll see that I just continuously tap the eyeshadow onto my brush, and I'm always back and forth into the palette. And then what I like to do is I like to get a smaller, fluffier brush. This is the Morphe M506. And I like to get a small fluffy brush because I really like to get in here. This actually might be too fluffy. I'll use this brush. This brush is, I'm not sure, sorry. But I'll apply the eyeshadow onto there. I also, when I map this out, I make sure I go just a little bit above my natural crease, because when you cut out your cut crease, you're going to cut a little bit above your natural crease. This is so that you can actually see the cut crease and all the work that you've put in. Now, the reason why I thought I'd do this type of video is because I don't know if it's because I'm old or what, but I'm going to say as I've gotten older, my makeup taste has kind of changed, to be honest. Like, I was really into the full glam, the full cut crease, the very Instagrammable makeup, which, don't get me wrong, is very beautiful. It is creative, it is amazing, and I still do really love to do it. But I feel like it also doesn't translate really well in real life compared to the side that I show you that I'm going to do. But it does photograph really nicely. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so I've roughly mapped out what I want, the type of shape and all that I'm looking for. So I'm going to go back in with that Morphe brush, the little bit more fluffier brush, and very, very, very gently. I don't really want to move the product around too much. I'm just going to wiggle here on the edges just to begin that blend. But as we continue on, you'll see later on that the blend just happens naturally. Now, because I really want a really gentle blend, I want light pressure. So I'm going to be holding my brush like way down the barrel, and this just allows me to use minimal pressure. Like if I hold it here, I'm really going to have a lot of pressure, whereas if I hold it down the barrel a bit further down, it's just a little bit less pressure. So something like that. It's not blended to the gods, but it's not as harsh. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the colour Slow Burn, which is that shade right here, and I'm going to grab that on my Morphe brush. On the very, very tip of that brush, I'm going to tap off any excess, and I'm going to overlap my brush. I don't know if you guys can see, but see how it's 50% on that first shade and 50% on my skin. So if I do a dot here, you'll see that the colour here is on my skin, but it's also overlapping with that darker brown. That's what I'm looking for, and that's going to help me blend and have the smooth transition of shades. So I'm going to go in with Slow Burn. This is the part where I'm going to blend, and I'm going to hold my brush in the middle of the barrel. See that? It's right on the middle. And I'm just going to back and forth. I'm not really going to go full circular like this, but I am going to do little miniature circles. And you can see like it's starting to blend that harsh line of that first shade that we put down. Now it's always going to look ridiculous when you first start, but you just need to trust the process, and it does all come together in the end. And I'm only ever picking up a little bit on my brush. You'll see I keep going back and forth. That's fine. Okay, so once we've got something like that, that's how we're looking at the moment. We're going to go up in lightness. So what I'm going to use is I'm going to use this shade here called Basic. And you can see like there's a noticeable jump in the 3 shades. So I'm going to use this Sephora brush. It's a Pro Precision Crease brush, number 17. It's a really fluffy but small type brush. And I'm going to grab some Basic, and pretty much the same theory that I told you guys about the 50% is what we're going to do with this one. So I'm going to hold my brush up like this, perpendicular, again holding my hand towards the end of the barrel, and I'm going to wiggle that shade up. And this one I'm going to also enlarge in my circular motions when I'm blending. I like to also bring it here up into my eyebrows, and I'm really making sure I blend this really well. Now, once we've got that, something that I like to do is I like to go back with the other shades that we used. So what I mean by this is I'll first go back in with the brush that I used for the darker shade, and I won't put any more product on, just whatever's on there. And this is a part where kind of like I bring it back in, but I'm also making sure I soften the blend, trying hard to not go over that second shade. But this is just me perfecting everything that I've done so far. Then I'll go back in with that Slow Burn shade and bring that in. Now you can use this theory as well, or this technique as well, with coloured eyeshadow. It works just the same, but just know that it's a lot of back and forth with the blending. It's not just simply put it on, blend, 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 put it on, blend, 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 put it on, blend, 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 and then, you know, Bob's your uncle. It's a little bit of work, and it does take a lot of time and a lot of back and forth which, you know, we tend to cut out of our videos and stuff like that, because it's boring to just sit there and watch. So now I'm just going back in with basic, and I'm really just making sure everything is well blended. And I'm going in very gently with that shade. I'll go back in with my first brush that I used the first shade with, because I'm not happy with this outer corner here. Then I'll go back in with the second brush. I'm not dipping into the shadows again. It's just whatever's on the brush. I might actually apply a little bit of black, so I'm going to use the black shade in this palette. It's called Lights Out. I'm really going to tap off any of the excess here. And just gently, I'm going to look straight into my mirror. And I just want to deepen this outer corner here. I just really want that depth there. Now I know black is a very scary colour, but always start with a little bit. And then I'll go back in with Intuition, that first shade, just to help me blend out that black. So I'm just going to do a lot of patting motions. And then I'll go in with a touch more of Slow Burn, that second shade that we went into, just here. And then I'll go back in with a little bit of Basic as well. And you can see that it's a lot darker. Okay, now we're going to cut the crease. Now, I'm sure you would have seen some tips and tricks, like you put the product here, you look up, and you can follow that line, or you can go in and stamp. A way that I like to do it is I like to use a really thin brush. This is a art brush, Artiste Finesse. It's just an art brush, a really thin art brush. And I will use my P. Louise base once more. So what I do is I load that brush up with the P. Louise base, and then I look, so I have a mirror on hand, and I look straight into the mirror. I look straight into the mirror and I look at where my crease is when I look naturally. Like, so if I'm looking at you like this, you can see where my crease is, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line. So I'm going to start it about here. And I want it to stop about there, so halfway. Don't worry too much about how messy it is. We're going to go back in and clean it up. Once I've got that, I'm going to use a concealer brush. This is a concealer brush by XO Beauty. I'm going to load that up with the P. Louise base, and I'm going to fill in that whole blank space that we have going there. I'm going to tap once I get to the outer corner, or like outer portion here, just so there's not that much product there. And then to perfect this line, I'm going to, as much as I can, smooth it out with my brush. Now I'm able to look down because I've mapped out where I've cut the crease. At this point in time, I'm pretty much kissing my mirror. Okay, so we've got something like that. Now, if you really want to make it sharper, what you can do is you can get another fine brush. I'm just going to grab a really fine brush. This is another art brush. I'm not sure what it's called though, unfortunately. And then what we're going to do is we're going to look down into our mirror and perfect that line even more. So I'm just using that first shade that we used, the darkest brown, Intuition. And I'm really coming in here and making sure that line is as crisp as I can get it. What we're going to do now is I'm going to get that first brush again. Whatever is left on that brush, I'm going to pat right here where the cut crease kind of like stops, where we blended it with our finger. This is just so it helps us blend into everything else here a lot easier. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab that second shade and I'm going to overlap that, just so it gives like a smoky blend. The shimmer shade, what I like to use a really dense flat brush. I'll use something like this. This is the BH Cosmetics number 4 brush, and we'll go in with Splendid, that shade, that shimmery shade right there. I'm going to load that on my brush. So I've loaded it on my brush. I'm then going to spritz that with some setting spray. This is a Revolution Hydrate and Fix setting spray. I'm going to spritz that, and then I'm going to pat that onto my lid, and I'll start on the center, and then I'm going to slowly etch my way up to that line. And I'm looking down into the mirror as well. So once I get to this part here, you can see a really noticeable stop in the blend. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up more of that shimmer shade. I'm not going to spritz it anymore, but I am going to pat over like this. So I'm just patting very gently, and then what I'll do is I'll go back in with that second shade that we used, Slow Burn, on my little fluffy brush, and once again I'll tap that over, and I'm really going to try and make sure that is seamless. Now I do feel like it can be darker, so I'll go back in with Intuition. I'm going to use that same brush and ever so gently just patting that around. I'll also go in with some black to bring back the depth. So I'm kind of tapping and flicking at the same time. Go back in with that brush that we used, this shimmer shade, and gently tap over that. So you've got something looking like this. Now for the inner corner, this inner portion here, I'm going to use Fair Play, which is one of the highlighters in this palette, which is this one here, right here. I'm just going to flip my brush around because I only used the one side for that shimmer shade. I'm going to flip it around, apply some of Fair Play onto the brush, and I'll pat that in here, and you'll see it's starting to blend itself into that coppery shade. And then you can flip back over to that coppery side to help soften that blend, and that's what you've got. So I'm going to clean up underneath my eyes, and then we can continue on. Alrighty, so I've cleaned up my eyes, like all the fallout that's happened. Let's go on to the face. I would prime my face, with any primer. I'm just going to use the Hydrate Primer by Revolution. I'll apply that all over. I'll also run a little bit of this underneath my eyes to hydrate my under eyes. Then what I like to do, because I will be photographing this for Instagram, like when I do Instagram makeup, I know I'm going to be taking a photo, so I want to try and minimize my pores as much as I can. So what I do is I go in with the e.l.f. Putty Primer. Just using my finger, I go in like this, and I put it on the areas that I'm most concerned with. So usually it's right here in this little groove of my nose, my cheeks, and I somehow have really large pores on the top of my lips, so I make sure to go in with that. And what I do is I'll go in with some powder, a really light dusting of powder to set it, because I feel like that primer is quite slippery, so I make sure to set it down with some powder. I'll just grab a big fluffy brush, a little bit of translucent powder. I'll really tap the excess off, and I'll pat that in. This is also a really good technique if you get really oily. Foundation. I generally like to use a concoction. I like to mix my foundations. So for this, I'm going to mix two foundations that I've nearly run out of. This is the Revlon Candid foundation, and this is the YSL Touch It Claire foundation. Now for Instagram, I do go for a more fuller coverage, and then I will use a sponge. I do like to use brushes, just depends how I'm feeling. For this side of my face, I'll use a sponge, and I'll begin to work that into my skin. I always avoid my under eyes as well, because we're going to be putting concealer there. So when I do my Instagram makeup, I really make sure to cake it on. And when I cake it on, it does really translate really well in photos. But I notice in real life and in natural lighting, it does tend to look quite cakey. You can see how full coverage that is. It is quite intense, which is fine if you wear your foundation like this. That's completely fine. Not saying you can't. So once we've got something like this, I will then go in with concealer. I'll go in with my Too Faced Born This Way. This is also when you can sharpen your outer corner here. And I'll mix a little bit of this one, the darker one, in Natural Beige. So that first one was in Vanilla. I usually would do some here and a little bit here in the center, but because I'm doing half a face, I won't bother too much with that. So then I use the triangular side and I'll begin to blend that out. With this outer corner, I'll use my concealer brush again just to help me get right up in there. Then what I like to do now, I like to do this in my everyday life too, but not as much. So I'll go in with this Too Faced Born This Way multi-use concealer in Maple, and I'll use this to start to bronze my face, and then using my sponge again, I'll use that to blend it out. Something that I do in both sides is really try and keep everything high up to really lift my face. Feel like you've come too far down, just turn the sponge over to where you used the lighter concealer and really sharpen that out. Once I've got that down, I'll go back into my translucent powder. I'll work the powder onto my sponge. I'll look up and I'll bake underneath my eyes and my smile lines. Okay, and I'll let it sit there for a second. Now, as it sits there, I will go back in and I'll complete my under eyes. So I'll just use that dark shade and I'll wiggle that to and fro underneath. Then I'll go in with a mixture of Slow Burn and Basic. I'll mix the two shades together and I'll really smoke that out. Now, because you've got the under eye powder there, or the translucent powder, sorry, if you have any fallout, it's a lot easier to dust off, because once you dust off the bake, it'll all just dust off with it. And then I think I might put a eyeliner in my waterline. This is the Zoeva Graphic Eyes in Glance. I'll run that on my waterline too. And then I'll use a really small brush. I'll use this brush. I actually don't know what that brush is, but I'll go in with that highlighter shade, the Fair Play, and I'll really highlight my inner corner here. Back to the face. What I'll then do is I'll grab my Cover FX press powder. This is in the shade G50. I'll get a really big fluffy brush and I'll really load up the product on that brush. Now this powder also gives a little bit of coverage, so I'm then going to go in and set it all and also dust off any of the bake that I have going on. You can see it's really matte. Now I'll go in with some bronzer. Now I'm going to use a Too Faced Born This Way bronzer. This is in the old packaging, but that's alright. I'm going to use a big fluffy brush and I'll begin to work that where we put that darker concealer. I'll also bring a little bit here underneath my jawline, and then I'll go in with some blush on the same brush. This is a Tarte First Class blush. First Class is the shade, sorry, and I'll really load that up as well on my brush, and I'll apply that. Now highlighter. I like a blinding highlighter naturally. Sometimes I like the more wet look. Sometimes I might go a little bit more extreme. For Instagram, I tend to go a little bit more extreme, so I'll go in with that Fair Play shade again. I'll spritz it a little bit, one spritz, and then I'll apply that to the highest points of my cheekbones, and I'll really make sure I blend it as much as I can. I'll also apply some of this up here. I'll go in with that brush that we used just to help me soften that harsh defined line. I think that can be a little bit more blinding for Instagram. Yep, beautiful. Just go in with that brush once more. So that's the bulk of it. My eyebrows, I tend to do the same really. Maybe I might define that side a little bit more. Actually, yes, I'll define my brows a little bit more. So I'll just use this Maybelline one, and I tend to define my outer tail a lot because I don't get a lot of hair there. I will use a tinted brow gel. Let's use this P. Louise one. And I'll start at the tail end because I want the bulk of the product there. And then I'll gently run that at the front. This whole time I thought I was recording. God damn it. What I said was I'm going to start onto my everyday side. And for the sake of the video, I am going to use the same foundations. I'm using my Sephora brush, the Pro Flawless Airbrush brush in the number 56. And what I did was I picked up a little bit of that product and I focused it here in the center of my face. And I'm really making sure I blend that in really, really well into my skin. Something that I was saying when I thought I was recording is sometimes I do enjoy a fuller coverage in my everyday life, but because I feel like my skin is quite clear at the moment, I don't feel like I need it. So I'll just use a little bit of it. I am enjoying using the Tinted Moisturizer by Colourpop, this one here, in my everyday life. I'm really enjoying that. So again, same on this side, I kind of avoid my under eyes. If you can see, I'm going in with the smallest amount. I'm not really caking up the foundation. If I feel like I need a little bit more, maybe a little bit more here and here. I feel like my nose is going to look weird anyway because one side's really full coverage than the other. Okay, so if I zoom you guys in, you can see that this side still looks like skin. I don't have much of the discoloration that I had here on my cheeks. My skin is still showing through, it's just a little bit more even compared to this side where it just looks really full coverage, really matte, really powdery, really cakey. So you can start to see the difference. So using the same concealers, I'll go in with vanilla and I'm gonna go in with a little bit. So I'll go a little bit here and I'll go a little bit here. And I'll see how I go with that once I blend it out. I'm just going to use the same brush. And I'm just going to pat that out. What I will do is sometimes I don't use my P. Louise base on an everyday basis. I will just use concealer. Now, if it just so happens that Robert Welsh is watching this video, I know you don't like this. And like, I apologize. But I mean, it is what it is. And that's all I will use. I don't feel like I need any around here. I think I'm pretty happy with that. Again, for the sake of the video, I'll use the maple shade. And this time though, I'm going to add here, here. And I'm not going to worry so much about this portion here, my temples. But I am going to use the same brush and begin to blend that out. Sometimes I will set my face. It depends how I'm feeling. But again, for the sake of the video, I will. So first off, I will go in with my translucent powder. On this side, I used my sponge, but on this side, I'm going to use a brush. And I'll use this brush. I don't know who it's by, couldn't tell you. This time, I'm really going to tap off the excess. I'm gonna look up. I don't really have a lot of creasing happening. I have a little bit, which I will soften out. But if you have creases down there, the chances are no matter how much you bake or anything like that, you're gonna get creasing. It's just the way our body is. So I've applied a really light layer. I'll go in with a little bit more. Like, I've barely got anything on the brush, but I'm tapping that into the skin. And then for the face, if I am going to set it, I will use a big brush like I did on this side. However, it's a lot more fluffier. See how it's a lot more fluffier? This is a powder brush by Real Techniques, and instead of digging in like I did with the Instagram side, I'm just going to very gently coat that. Like you can see a little bit of colour there, and then I'm going to tap it onto my skin. I generally don't like a lot of powder in my everyday life. While I've got you guys zoomed in, I'll probably just start on the eyes. So for my eyes, I'll smooth out any creases. In my everyday life, I honestly cannot be stuffed doing a whole cut crease. So this is what I do. I'm going to use basic first on this big fluffy brush. This is by BH Cosmetics number 1. I'll tap off any of the excess and I'll work that really high up into my crease, a little bit here in the inner corner, and I usually do really big circles and back and forth motions. I tend to like my eyeshadow really blown out. Again, my hand is holding the barrel at the end of the brush. Again, I'll go back in and pick some more product up. I always try and use a little bit and then work up to the opacity that I want. I'll also extend this shadow out. You can see I'm like really big circular motions. I'll also run that underneath my eyes, so I'll look up into the mirror. I've got my mirror up here. I'll look up and I'll smoke that and also connect it here in the corner. Now I like a really smoky under eye, always have. I'm sure if you've watched my previous videos, I always say this. I just absolutely love it. So that's how we're looking at the moment. I might change the brush to a little bit more of a thinner brush. I think I'll use this one by the No Name brand one. I'll go in with Intuition, that dark shade that we used, and I'll place that just here on the outer corner, and I'll work that into my crease as well. You'll see that this side is just a hell of a lot quicker as well. Like it's not as precise as the Instagram side, but you can still have the same effect, if you know what I mean, but in a softer version. And I'm not really bringing it into my inner corner like I did on the Instagram side. I'm really trying to focus that on the outer corner. I'll also bring this down here as well. One thing I still do is I will still go back in with my first brush and I'll go over the blend. I did pick up a little bit more of that shade, that basic shade. Nice. Now for the shimmer, I'll use a bit more of a fluffier flat brush. I'll pick up that shimmer shade that we used and I'll apply that on my lid. Now I'll tend to do a soft cut crease, if you can even call it that, but you'll see like I'm blending it into my crease. See what I'm doing there? It's not a really harsh line like this. I will go back in with Intuition and I'll apply a little bit of that. Cool. And then I'll go in with Fair Play. I'll just use the same brush. Now, should I use the same colour in the waterline? Maybe. I'll do it. So I'm going to use it, but I'm only going to apply this halfway, like that. And that's pretty much my eyes for every day. So we'll move on quickly to the face again. I'm going to use the same bronzer. I'll use a powder brush, tap off any of the excess. Now what I love to do in my everyday life is I like to start here and connect the bronzer with my eyeshadow. I don't know why, I just feel like it is so much more cohesive. It works and flows really well. Like here I feel like it's just a really sharp cut and you've got your bronzer here and your bronzer here, whereas this you'll see that it just, I don't know, I absolutely love it. So I'm really overlapping with that eyeshadow and working it up. And then I will bronze my cheeks. I'll put a little bit on my temple. Very nice. Now blush, I always just use the same brush, man. But blush as well. Just gonna very gently. And sometimes I like to bring my blush here on my nose as well, because I just think it's so cute. And also I'll also sometimes bring it here. Now the highlighter. We're going to use the same highlighter, but I think this time I might use my big fan brush because it's minimal effort. I'll just put some of the product there on the very tip. I'm not going to spritz it. I'm just going to go straight in and very gently. The brush will do the blending for you. Don't throw it out. Trust me. It is so good. A little bit here. Usually I go down the center of my nose and here. But that's pretty good. I like that. Okay, so for my brows every day, what I tend to do is I'll just comb over them. And then I'll use this bad boy, the Urban Decay Brow Blades in Dark Drapes. Now, I love this pen side. This pen side is like thebomb.com. I actually need to get another one. What I'll do is I'll just fix up my tail ends by drawing hair-like strokes. Put a little bit here, just like that. And then I'll use my Benefit 24-hour brow setter. I'll comb through. This is just like a clear brow gel, but it's really good at holding your brows in place. Cool. Now, mascara. I'll just use any old mascara. I'm just going to use the Urban Decay Lash Freak. And then for lashes, I'll use my Tati and Jamie Genevieve lashes, which I've cut in half. And I'll apply that on both sides. As I said before, I usually go with a really full lash anyways. I have started to cut my lashes in half, and I tend to wear that as well in my Instagram looks. So I'll do that off camera because I just find that boring, and then I can show you what I do for the rest of the face. Okay, so the lashes are on and this is how we're looking. Now for lips, something that I do whether it's on Instagram or in everyday life is I use a dark lip liner and a nude lipstick. If I'm going to go with a nude lip, which I am going to go with a nude lip today. Surprise, surprise. So what I might do is I'll use my NYX retractable lip liner in Cocoa and I'll outline my lips with that. I tend to always overdraw my lips slightly in the center, and then on the outer corners I will be true to my lip line. Something that I'll do on my everyday side is I'll very gently colour in a little bit of my lip, and then I'll use my finger just to kind of like blend it downwards. For the lipstick, I'll use this Melt one in the shade Nude, and on my Instagram side I will apply that, and I'll slightly overlap my lip liner, and then on this everyday side pat that in, rub that, and then I'll just use my finger to really soften that. Then as a final step, I'll spritz my face on both sides. And we're done. This is my everyday and this is my Instagrammable photography ultra glam side. So if we zoom in, you can see the eyes are really glamorous. Please don't get me wrong when I say it is still beautiful. It's beautiful, it's cut crease, it's blended, it's got that punch, it's creative, it's amazing, it is beautiful. I love it. I do. I love it a lot. A lot. But in reality, this is probably what I wear most days, because it's just, you saw, it's so quick, so easy, barely any effort, and even with the lashes I still feel like it packs a punch, and it's just so soft, so beautiful, and probably a lot more wearable, and more wearable in the fact that maybe a lot of people might feel more comfortable with this side compared to this side. But I still find both sides really nice. Now, when we have a look at skin, you can see on this side, even though I've set it with the setting spray, it still looks quite cakey. I feel like it looks really thick, really strong, like even the highlighter up here. And compared to this side, although you can see my texture, it's not, my skin is not 100% perfect like this side. It's a little bit more dewy, a little bit more skin-like. It's different. I feel like this side wears really well throughout the day and throughout the night compared to this. Although I applied that e.l.f. putty primer, I still feel like a lot of my texture is really apparent, especially here where I've got the highlighter. You can really see texture, whereas this side where I've got highlighter, my texture, it's still there, not saying that it's not there, but it's not as insane as this. And then if we have a look at my under eyes on this side where we've baked, it's really dry, really crusty, really, yeah, just dry. Like you can really see the texture, whereas on this side that I've used a little bit of powder, it's not as noticeable. Yeah, and even with my eyebrows, like this is a lot more darker than this. This is more fluffy, more natural, more brow-like, I guess you could say. In saying that, this side will photograph beautifully, like it will really translate really well on camera, and I think that is apparent with what I see in my viewfinder. It's really flawless. It's got that oomph, that glam, that, you know, intensity. It looks amazing on camera. This side, it's okay. It doesn't have the same effect as this side. Okay, so I'm sitting right in front of my window, and I think with the natural light you can really see how this side translates in the natural light. It still looks like skin, yes, we've established that. It looks glowy, it looks really nice. Whereas this side in the natural light, it's really strong, really, it's makeup, it's going to be apparent either way, but it's just a lot more thick, and you can really see the texture, and it just looks really caked on. Still flawless, but that's because I've only just applied it, so it's going to look really good. But throughout the night and whatever, you're going to see the difference. Hopefully you can see the difference if I look straight. Okay, and there we have it. I hope it made sense. I hope you can see the difference. But yeah, this is just a really cool way to show you guys the difference of, you know, Instagrammable, photogenic, flawless, etc, etc, etc side compared to something that's really quick, easy, but still effective in its own little way. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, like, comment, subscribe, let me know which side you would prefer either way, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much, bye!